So let's talk about people. The base question here being, are 90% of the people terrible? Well, that's not a very good topic. And 90% is a pretty high number. I was chatting with a friend of mine online, and I think I said 90% of the people are terrible, and he questioned that, and he was right to do so. I tend to think that, because most of my communications with people are online, and people are far worse online than they are in person, which is interesting, and I've noticed that for a long time, since back even with Usenet, and that had a higher quality of person, depending on how you measure quality, than the average person, you know. My lighting kind of sucks, doesn't it? Sorry about that. Probably need a camera with a little LED on top or something for fill lighting. When I used to know people and stuff, I would have guessed much lower than that as far as the number of people who are just awful. And I guess we'd have to define what awful is. But I don't think it's entirely an unreasonable number to guess at, because in person, a lot of people are giving you a false face. They're lying to you. People lie all the time. And this is one of the reasons I like the idea of radical honesty. And I would like to, if I'm going to be among people again, I want them to like the idea of radical honesty. I want us to say things to each other that we don't want to hear, that don't always make us like each other, you know, that we don't all have to agree with each other, because we don't agree with each other. And I do want to only have people near me who agree on some base values and things, but one of those base values is being honest. Because otherwise we kind of have fakeness. We have fake friends. I've had a lot of fake friends. And, you know, I don't have to agree with people to be friends with them, but I do have to agree on some base values. So, and I guess I'm not just talking about friends, but actually people who I would want to live with me, which is a far higher standard. You know, if you were going to think about who you were going to date, or who you were going to have as a housemate or a business partner, you know, what percentage of the world would you want to be your business partner? Given that business partners screw each other over all the time, given the opportunity, many couples who claim that they love each other and are committed to each other sleep around and lie to each other. That's not uncommon, and that really lowers your, faith in humanity right there. And I see more and more people with their YouTube channels. I see a lot of 20-nothing-year-olds very frustrated. And they're seeing things in a pretty real way. And they now can speak to the entire world about it. And I like those videos. I like seeing how frustrated they are and how honest they are about it, because we have real shit we have to figure out and deal with in order to operate effectively together, in order to have trust with each other. We have to break through some of the barriers we currently have. And I think most people aren't even compatible, and that, people often say, well, let's get together and do a thing together and invest in each other. And a lot of those people are people you should avoid, because if they have no filter on their willingness to do that, it's entirely possible that they have very little to offer, and that they have a lot they want to take. And they will lie as much as they can to get you to be a person that can be their victim. And, the percentage thing of 90%, that's ridiculous. I don't know how to measure it, But, and it depends. Are you measuring among the friends and the people you have contact with, or your own family? I just know we have problems we're not addressing. And so I'm going to be the asshole who brings up that we have shit to deal with. And I'm going to say we need to exclude most people from our interactions. I'm not talking about people on the street. We should treat each other nicely. We should set up good systems and have justice in our systems. But even if you look at how society is organized, it isn't random that most people are enslaved to the systems that they're victimized by, that their healthcare system sucks, whether it's socialized or privatized or not. Actually, there's almost no private systems. And the U.S. certainly is a terrible example of what people call private. It's not private at all. It's totally mixed in with the government. It's mixed in with the courts and judgments and regulations and everything else that is designed. I mean, like in the U.S., for example, drugs are really expensive. Why? They aren't other places in the world. It's because the system is set up to enslave you. So, I just talked to a woman who is in actually 2 lawsuits, and she mentioned that the lawyer she's dealing with, who's a lawyer who knows exactly what she needs for one of the lawsuits, and that lawyer charges $650 an hour to talk to them and to do stuff. I don't know. But the fact that you even need a lawyer shows the massive corruption in the system. I've never needed a lawyer. I've never been involved in a lawsuit. I've never been sued, and I've never sued anyone because I'm pretty straightforward with people, and probably I've just been lucky because certainly in the U.S., where I come from, it's very easy to sue somebody with really no cause at all. You can sue anybody, and you might win. And the entire justice system is corrupt to the core. And so I'm going to call those lawyers part of the government too. They're part of the state. And if you even look at what lawyers have to sign and agree to when they get their designation as a lawyer, they get accepted by the Bar Association. My first girlfriend actually became a lawyer, and so I got to be privy to all of her training. And I like law. Law is super interesting because we have to figure out how to organize ourselves and work together. And unfortunately, we need law to do that. People are not inherently good. And so she signed a thing that said a bunch of stuff. It's been too long and I forgot. But basically it said, I'll be part of the system. I will defend that system and fuck the people. They didn't say that in the form. If you make any money or are successful, someone's going to come try and take it. Because some people, that's their whole strategy. They look for people who work hard and create and innovate, and then they look at how they can take that over. I've even worked in a corporation where the group I was in, of nice people working hard to make cool products that serve people, was taken over by people with business degrees who thought they knew more than we did, but they didn't, not about the product. And they may or may not have been good for the group to make money, but money should not be the primary goal. And I'm not anti-making money, but money is fake. The entire way it's handled is fake. It's not real. And so, like, if you, whatever. I mean, we don't need to talk about fiat currency and its ridiculousness, But, and crypto is not a magic solution either. That'll be taken over by the government as well. And any idea you have that it's anonymous or is a good tool for a free market doesn't make any sense. It's digital money. It won't exist when there's a solar storm anyway. All the satellites come down and you can't use it. So, I'm happy if you made money off crypto and stuff, but also stop spamming people about crypto. The spammers, of course, aren't the people who actually made the money off the crypto. They're people claiming that they know something and they're promising you that they're going to, everyone's a fucking scammer at this point. So let's get back to that 90%. It's like, okay, I don't agree with the 90% probably. And there's lots of people who are just trying to raise their children and have good families and be good people. And they do self-evaluate and they try and not hurt other people. They try and be empathetic. And their goal is to produce and help as many people as they can. Those are the people I want. And so let's just go with the 90% being bad. How do I figure out who the 10% are that are good? And how do you figure it out? What are the values you require in someone else? Like, obviously things like direct coercion are terrible, but we live in a just whirlwind, a storm of coercion in every possible way. Everything gets regulated so that they can get a cut out of it. I mean, you can't even cut someone's hair without a license in some places. And it's like, that's not even a dangerous activity. And this is not how society used to work. Freedom is actually massively profitable. Letting people interact economically without the government being involved in every goddamn detail is massively profitable. But the bullies of the world have associated and set up control systems for everything at every level. Even the fact that the government can order you to go kill someone else who's innocent somewhere else, and then that place has to order their young people to fight, and everybody has to kill each other, and you just got rid of a lot of young men, primarily men. But the entire society suffers. Depends on which side of the war you're on and how unbalanced it is. But it's not good for women or children either, right? It's not good for anybody. It's not good for the environment. War has a massive environmental cost. Even the idea that people buy products that are produced with slave labor far away makes them a slaver. You say you're against slavery, but as long as it's far away and you get cheap products, you're okay with it. And you will even lend your vote, which is meaningless, by the way, but you'll even lend your vote to the government that gives you the cheapest products, that lets you use the most energy as possible. That's fatal for the world. That's fatal for civilization. And that's why your civilization will collapse. It's because you thought you needed a bunch of stuff that you do not need. Our actual needs to survive and thrive are very minimal. We don't even have to be all magically comfortable all the time. You know, and maybe you're bored and stuff, which, well, I'm bored actually, but I'm not bored because I'm consuming a lot, and I don't solve it with a lot of consumption. But people are just basically spoiled. I mean, what's that phrase? It's sexist the way they phrase it. I could try and unsexify it, ungenderize it. It's strong men make good times. Good times make... I'm missing a bunch of this. If you know this, you should totally know this better than I do. Good times make weak men. Weak men make bad times. Bad times make strong men, which is the messiest part of that process, because then you have to fight. And the women are in there too, so that's why I don't like this gendered, because like you could claim that war somehow is the domain of men. No, it's not. Women are just not sent to the front lines to get chopped up. Women are a protected class, and if there was any real feminists, they would actually care about that, and they would try and fight for justice for all. But most feminists are actually female supremacists, and you know, you could look at like waves of feminism and different stuff. I mean, I read stuff from old school feminists, real feminists, and I agree with them on hardcore things that they say. And now your weak ass bullshit female supremacist feminists are really very anti-male, lots of them. And so they're, you know, first wave feminism, second wave feminism, third wave feminism, all this stuff. I mean, I like the hardcore real feminists, like Camille Paglia is a pretty interesting person. I have 2 of her books I read a long time ago. I haven't read them since then. Vamps, Tramps, and something, I don't know. There's another one I got. And then Gloria Steinem actually said a bunch of stuff I agree with. And so I can't even say if I'm a feminist or not, because the word gets used in too many different ways. I can't say that if I'm a capitalist or not, because when some people say the word capitalism, they refer to total oppression and corruption, what I would call a plutocracy, which is what the United States is a plutocracy. It's not a democracy. It's not a democratic republic. The people are just shit. They're slaves. And they should recognize that the government, that the laws say that they're supposed to have, the laws that people fought and died to create, the fairly brilliant founders of the United States who wrote some pretty good documents despite the surrounding genocide and slavery, what they actually wrote was really great about, you know, having individuals have sovereignty over themselves. Really good stuff. But that very quickly degraded in exactly the ways that the founding fathers, I guess that is sexist, I guess they were all guys, and the things that they predicted about how banking would destroy freedom, the ways in which systems get corrupt, they were right. It's just that they were not able to set up systems that could protect the system itself from corruption. And so by the time you got to the Civil War was really the end of the American experiment. And I'm very happy that the slaves got freed, I'm not so happy that slavery got expanded to include everyone else. So, and I'm fully recognizing there was corruption going on at the time, and that, the white old founders of the nation, USA, were that demographic. But what they actually did benefited everyone. And some of the legal systems and precedents that they set to break away from kings and stuff that's really pretty nefarious, they did a really good job at trying to fight against that. Things like defining free speech as being okay. Like right now in Thailand, apparently if you insult the king, you can go to jail. Are you shitting me? That's terrible. You should be able to insult anybody you want. Insult me. You can do it. Insult me in the comments if you want. I might delete them. But the world isn't mostly free. The world is mostly enslaved. And we're enslaved by not just governments, but our own culture. Religion, of course, plays into that. Religion and the state have often worked together for oppression. And it certainly works for delusion, and it works for, control of women. A lot of religions are very anti-woman, as having the rights of people. And religion has been used as an excuse for all sorts of horrible shit. And fundamentally, it's based on delusion. Personally, I follow a philosophy called a Charvaka. Charvaka is Indian materialism. Materialism not meaning consumerism. It's a philosophical term. And I study a lot of philosophy, so I use that word. But I used the word materialism with a guy the other day, and he thought I had to make a clear distinction between that and consumerism. I'm not talking about the same thing. I'm talking about believing in the physical world that exists around us. The shit we can actually see, that's the material world. And I'm not saying there isn't energy, electrical energy, gravity, whatever gravity is. I don't know how that works. Magnetism. Lots of shit goes on we can't see. We don't even understand how our own brains work and our own biological systems work. Okay, there's plenty of magical shit within the material world. But the key is that there's not some magic other world that you can pretend you can pretend all you want. You can lie to people and use it to oppress people. But there isn't some spiritual other world that you can draw upon to gain authority over others, which is what almost all spiritual people are doing. They're either victims of that or they are victimizers by making up some other authority outside of just this shit. This is the actual shit. So get in tune with that or stay the fuck away from me, because I don't trust you. I do not trust people who believe in a spiritual world. That doesn't mean I don't think we should have rituals. That doesn't mean that we don't appear to have very complex interactions with each other. But even with the trivial stuff about talking about your energy vibrations or your frequency you're operating at and all this bullshit, no, it's just a fancy way to insult people. Like you're a low frequency person. What a stupid ass insult. What it means is you're a fucking idiot and you're an asshole. You're a low frequency person. Well, get out some machines and let's start measuring, electromagnetic energy and actual things. Or let's just not make it up because you're so selfish that you want to have delusions that you want to inflict upon other people. And yes, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. Why would I? Which God would I believe in? And why would I pick a particular God that I happen to have been raised with? And why should you believe in a God you were raised with? Especially in a culture where if you don't believe in that, they'll fucking kill you. And people have had that happen. There was one guy, I forgot his name. I just saw a little meme about him. I got to look him up. But he got in trouble because he said that the moon isn't a god. I mean, we're talking, 600-800 years ago. I don't know when it was. But all around the world, people have used spirituality to continually oppress people. And I have that negative reaction to the degree where someone asks me what my birthday is, I don't even want to tell them. Not only because it's a banking question, so don't tell anyone your birthday ever. And it shouldn't be a banking question anyway. That's too much public knowledge. But if somebody asks you that, and then they're like, oh, but now I know what kind of person you are because of some zodiac system from Europe a long time ago, the Western zodiac system, and then I'm going to define you as being one of 12 types of people, and that gives me the right to tell you who you are, what kind of person you are. Really? How stupid can you fucking be? And that's the same thing for Mayan astrology. It's the same thing for For Chinese astrology, what year you were born or whatever, the year of the this. I mean, that's all fun stuff if it's just only for fun. Like when I was a kid, my parents told me, oh yeah, there's Santa Claus. It's a game we play. They never lied to me and said there was actually a Santa Claus. And if you actually believe in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or these fictional things, you're just as dumb as the people who claim there's a God. It's not very nice for me to call you dumb, but sorry, you're dumb. You're worse than dumb. You're willfully ignorant and stupid. Or dangerous, because a lot of the people who are actually in religion understand that they're manipulating people. They know exactly what they're doing, and they get very rich doing it. They're selling you false medicine. Just like when people make placebo medicines, false medicines that claim to help you, yeah, it works as a placebo. That's okay as long as we know it is a placebo and we're not lying. We're not selling snake oil to everyone. Those are the kind of people that, we already know that. We make it illegal in the cases where it's not popular, right? Fortune tellers, tarot cards. I have 3 decks of tarot cards. One of them has really great art on it. And it might even be fun as an exercise to lay out cards and then use that as a thinking tool of some kind. I even have a book about that, about using tarot as a thinking thing. I forgot the name of the book. I haven't looked at it in years. But, as a brainstorming tool of exploring ways of perceiving reality, there's a lot of options. But as soon as you start to say that shit actually means anything, as soon as you're reading tea leaves or reading palms, or checking out the bumps on someone's head, it's actually a thing, phrenology or something, I forget the name. But if you look up a Wikipedia page on things that are considered to be pseudoscience, if you look through that and those seem attractive to you, I would really love, and this would be really fun to do with somebody who's an easy victim for made up bullshit, and go through and have them say, okay, which of these do you think have validity? And then which of them do you think don't have validity? And then try and figure out with them why they think some of them aren't valid or how they would test those. How they would use epistemology, the philosophical school of thought about what is true. How do we know what is true? Which is damn near impossible. But how can we try and approximate something that is an agreed upon reality that we can then share as a vision and trust each other? I would love to take some of these people and say, what are the reasons you don't believe in those things? Just like for anybody who believes in a God, say, well, how come you don't believe in this God? How about this God? How about this God? Hinduism, I think I must have read this wrong, and it's actually fairly amusing and excellent. I like Hinduism. I've been listening to an audiobook about it to reacquaint myself, because I know more about Hindu philosophy than I do about the spiritual traditions of it, the made-up shit. But I think they said, in something I read, that there was 330,000 Hindu gods, and that lots of places just make up their own god. Well, it's fine with me. I can make up gods for all kinds of crap. I could pick a cool-looking tree. I have cool-looking trees. And I can say, this is this tree god. I'm going to name it, and I'm going to give it meaning that the tree, by the way, won't know about, even though I'm standing right in front of it and telling it who it is. The tree's not going to give any shit about me, okay? I'm just a blip. That tree's going to outlive me unless I cut it down. And I love trees. I plant them all the time. I've planted more trees than you have, and more than probably 99% of people in the world. And then there's some people who have planted way more trees than me, one way or the other. But, and I haven't personally planted all the trees that I'm going to claim I planted because I hired someone to do it. But I think I still get some gold stars or green stars for planting those trees if I pay someone else to do it for me. So, and I'm working on that. I think, anyway, back to trees and gods. So we can personify anything as a god. In particular, I was talking with somebody who's a Christian, and maybe an actual Christian in some sense. Great person, good friend of mine. I've known her for billion years. Billion being rounded off to about 35 years or something. But, we could look at the sun as a god. That would be the number one. If I was going to pick an entity to personify as a god, the sun would be a big one. I mean, it's the magic nuclear power plant in the sky, right? It has actual power. Life literally comes from the sun. And it's a tough god. I mean, it'll burn you. It might make a solar storm that fries your whole civilization. It will happen. Look up the Carrington event. You can start with the Carrington event. That was a solar storm in 1859, I believe. And the telegraphs and stuff, because there was almost no electronics at the time, telegraphs went haywire and stuff like that. Now, if we got a solar storm of that level, it would fry all sorts of shit. Your civilization would begin its collapse quickly, and billions would die. Seriously. And then you look up what geologists or other folks have figured out from looking at rocks and things, and they see that there was something called the Miyake events. Sorry, there's multiple. And those have happened like every 700 years or so. That's not that rare. Okay, that's pretty common. In geological time frame, that's continual. And so we built up this big civilization, and the Miyake events were bigger than the Carrington event. Meaning the Carrington event was a tiny solar storm by comparison to one that is going to hit us. Not maybe it'll happen sometime. It is a certainty. The civilization you see around you is a blip, and it's all fossil fuel based. It's all going to collapse. Now, does that matter? Well, not today. Not probably. I mean, it could happen right now. I don't know if we'll get any warning on it, but warning won't mean shit. Like if they told you a Miyake type event or a Carrington event was going to happen next week, that would pretty much be the same as it happening right now because there is no time to prepare. And you can learn about Faraday cages, wire cages of protecting electronics equipment, and we could even, hi honey, hello, what are you doing? You coming to say hi? Oh, you're cute-ums. That's not my dog. I left all my dogs at home. That's why I drive to town, because I didn't want them to come with me. Hi, cutums. What are you doing? You come say hi? Are you scared of me? I'm really nice. The dog did not know me. Looks like a nice dog, though. Anyway, so it's a certainty it's going to collapse. But what does that really matter for us? Like, I have a friend I was trying to say to him because he has some extra cash right now, and I said, well, maybe you should store some food, and then I mentioned solar storms and things like that, and also the pole shifts, because pole shifts happen in the Earth. North and South poles switch. They move all the time. The North Pole's moving, okay? The magnetic North Pole's moving. And people have different theories about when it might flip, but that's another case where we know it's going to flip. We don't know, as far as the times I've read about it, and I do occasionally check into these things every couple of years or so, we don't actually know, as far as I can tell, what happens when the poles flip. Like right now, the poles could flip tomorrow, and either massive shit would hit the fan, or some systems would get screwed up, like, GPSs and anything with a compass or gyroscope, or I don't know if people even use gyroscopes anymore, but a whole bunch of systems we rely on would go to shit. So, and we could all die. I mean, some people write that, there'll be these massive tidal floods. I don't know why it would affect the tides, though. Like the moon is the tides, right? So, anyway, that's just one other thing that will eventually occur and screw some shit up for us somehow. But the solar storms are more obvious. That one's going to totally fuck it up. The other big one is volcanoes, right? Somebody said, like, what was the worst year in human history? It was like the year 576 or something. I forget. You can search on what was the worst year in human history. But, we could get one big volcano could go off. The Yellowstone caldera could blow up, or any other one. And it could darken the skies, and all the agriculture could fail for a while or even permanently. It all depends. But we would have a very hard time surviving at the level we do now. And we're already under stresses, right? We currently have a bunch of oil still. And worst case is we come up with cheap energy. Because one of the responses to this is, we should have nuclear energy, right? That'll protect us because we'll have all this energy. And it's like, no, actually, that means you're all going to die. Because we will produce then more civilization, putting us in a weaker position. And wasn't I supposed to be talking about what percentage of people are horrible? Well, you'll find out what percentage of people are horrible when they don't have water to drink and they don't have food to eat. And they will eat each other. We do resort to cannibalism when we have to. That sounds especially gross to people, so it's fun to bring it up. But most people will just die and rot. We won't even have time to eat each other. So anyway, this guy with this extra money, I was like, well, even if it's not going to be one of these larger disasters that you're preparing for, there's going to be interruptions in food supplies. I mean, I've seen cases where gasoline has gotten difficult and there's been cars lined up and people don't have gasoline. You look at a place like Cuba and they often have problems with power and fuel sources and things. I've been in a civil war zone where people didn't have gasoline for taxis and stuff. So these are just tiny little emergencies. And so at minimum, this guy could buy food to survive for a week, a month, 6 months. And he said, well, yeah, but I don't like to eat canned food and stuff like that. Well, whatever. You want to live or not? I mean, he has a kid. Do you want to fucking live? And if you live in a society where not just you, but everyone around you is storing food and water, then when there is a more temporary interruption, let's say there's one of these volcanoes around here. These are all ex-volcanoes, right? If one of them blows up, that's local. That's a local problem. But and even the hurricane. There was a hurricane that hit Florida, and hurricanes that hit in the Caribbean. Hurricanes hit all over the place, and in most of those cases, there's somebody else somewhere else who can come in and try and help. And so it's not as bad as it would be. What happens when it's bigger scale? There won't be help coming. And that's going to change people's attitude quite a bit right there. When there's no help coming, you're out of food and water, and nobody else has any either. Ooh, that's going to be messy. Very, very messy. And so if everybody was prepared for at least, I think the Mormons say 3 months, you're supposed to have food supply for 3 months. And of course, not all Mormons do that. But I even think that's too short of a period. And more importantly than storing some food, which is some kind of level of survivalism of like, we're going to prepare and have stuff stored up. More importantly, the big solution is food forest farming all around the world. Getting every type of tree that is useful and good to us or wildlife also, let's include the rest of life as well, and planting those anywhere they will survive. And then when there's a change and the species that is in a place now dies, which it could do anywhere, there'll be other genomes that can take over. And of course, the first thing people bring up, and my friend did as well, is, well, what about invasive plants? Well, most plants aren't invasive. Okay, we're talking about a 2% problem where certain plants, obviously, you don't want to move around, or species rather. Like you look at places like Hawaii, Australia has had, somebody introduced rats or somebody introduced rabbits. There's a lot of species that have been introduced into fragile ecosystems and caused massive amounts of problems. Don't do that. But it's very easy to avoid doing that. For example, I'll just give you an example of rosemary. Okay, there's, 4 or 5 kinds of rosemary that I know of. And those have 0 chance of being invasive in the current climate I'm in. I have to reproduce those by cutting pieces of them off, cloning them, and planting them. They don't reproduce from seed unless I was going to do a bunch more work to reproduce them from seed, which I should do to rediversify the genome, since we don't want any particular species to all be clones, right? Like Cavendish bananas, for example. Look those up. Cavendish bananas can go away anytime. One disease and they're gone. And we already lost a type of banana. There was a banana that was, I think, better than Cavendish, and there was banana diseases. You can look this up. And those are, I think there was a whole species of really good bananas that were really good, and we lost them. Cavendish bananas are all based on one mutant banana, one mutant, and they're all genetically equivalent. Well, but there's a bunch of other kinds of bananas that we can grow. In fact, I grow one called Musa insete, and I think there's a different scientific name for it. I don't know how scientists decide how to name stuff, but they're called Assyrian bananas for some reason. I don't know if they're from Assyria, but they have seeds in them, and those are probably not native, by the way, either. But they're not in any kind of invasiveness problem. I've had ones that dropped seeds on the ground, and some of them occasionally have made a baby banana, but it's not like they make seeds and then the plant just spreads everywhere. It requires human intervention to even keep it alive. And so even if we were to take all the best species and plant them most everywhere, without human maintenance of that, most of those species will die. That's okay. If there was climate change, some of them would now be in an environment where it was like the native environment that they originally evolved into, if there is one, because some of them we've selectively bred so that they don't have a native environment anymore. Dogs are a good example, right? Like, we have bred dogs to not be wolves. We have bred a bunch of them, and if humans went away, if we were not helping them, feeding them, a whole bunch of breeds of dogs would just die, most of them. I mean, don't tell me there's very many places in the world where pugs are going to run wild. Hi, little cutie. How are you going to die when civilization falls? Some of them would live some places. And there are places where, like, in, I think, Japan, there's a place that was doing some kind of development of chemical or biological warfare. And when they abandoned that after World War II, there were some test bunnies that were left there, and the bunnies survived, and they thrived. So it's a bunny island. It's really cute. There's videos of, like, Japanese women on the ground being mobbed by a bunch of bunnies, and there's tourists. They sell the tourists food. The tourists feed the bunnies. It's a tourist attraction now. It's pretty cool. And bunnies can be invasive in some places. There's places where chickens live in Hawaii feral, but that's not normal. Chickens came from red jungle fowl in Indonesia, and if you just around here, like if nobody was taking care of chickens, chickens would go extinct here. Now, if we throw climate change into the mix and we have enough pockets of many genomes we think are useful, some of them would become invasive. More importantly, the more important ones aren't the ones that become invasive. Invasiveness, we have to look at what that means. It means like taking over so much, but if they take over too much, they will then die off in many cases, and you'll find stability will develop. So a chaotic system would redevelop stability without human intervention. But most of those species will die. Would walnuts grow here, for example? Let's say I plant walnut trees, which I've done. Well, I think either all or most of my walnut trees have died. That's because they can't reproduce on their own. At least I haven't gotten one to a point at which it is successful enough, big enough, that it has a chance. But I still don't think it would. So that's an example of a plant that has zero chance of being invasive. But if all the pines, let's say, there's a lot of pines over there. See the pines? All these hills are covered in pines. Let's say the climate changes in a way where those pines can't survive. Well, then we better goddamn hope that we have planted pockets of other things that will take that over, or we just end up with a desert. Even the Sahara used to not be desert. It's a big desert, North Africa, right? And it didn't used to be. There used to be water there. And this is all affected by things like ice ages and and larger climate changes that aren't even human caused, but just exist. So climate change exists regardless of human intervention, and I know it's a controversial topic for some idiots, but it shouldn't be. Climate change has occurred, it will occur, and of course we should also wonder how we are impacting that and our own impact on like our survival, the systems that keep us surviving. The point is, if we get enough stuff growing in enough places, something will live, because we need life to exist in places. Now, if we're all extinct, who really cares? I mean, what if the whole world became a dead rock? Would it really matter in the bigger picture? Not really. The universe would not care. The sun would not even care. The sun does not care about us. As cool a God as it is, we do not matter to God. Not that one. But we are evolved to think we want to live. If we want to live, we might want to get smarter. And we could do that. I've made a lot of videos about what we can do now to survive through this transition of the end of civilization, to keep the human genome going. Does that even matter? I mean, most of the other homos, we're Homo sapiens, right? This doesn't mean gay, by the way, in case you're clueless. The Homo neanderthalis, the Homo florensis or something, are those the Hobbit ones? We're finding these other genetic human variations that existed. They all died out. Do we sit around crying about that? No, we aren't them. Although we are a little bit Neanderthal, because there was a period that might have been brief, actually. We're still studying this stuff, where we fucked Neanderthals and we got their DNA. So if you get like your genetic testing done, you'll find out how much Neanderthal you are, and that varies around the world. And I don't know if they're something to look up also. Do we have any of Homo florensis DNA in us still? I think they do in like Indonesia, Oceania, somewhere over there. I don't know. You have to look it up. I'm not a total scientist. I'm a scientist like I am an architect, Actually, I'm more architect than I am geneticist. I don't know shit about genetics. I know like way more than the average person, especially since the average person knows mostly things that aren't true. People believe a lot of dumbass shit. Which brings us back to the topic. How stupid are we? Are we 90% stupid? I would say, yeah, we kind of are. Not just online, but like people believe so much dumbass shit. And I think it really comes back to epistemology, where epistemology should be really the first thing we teach children. This is one reason it's good to lie to children. Expose children to things that are false. Even when I was a child, I liked optical illusions because they were one way to look at the same thing two different ways or more. And teach children, like, how do you distinguish truth from false? True from false. And this is with AI, especially now. I mean, things are being made specifically to fool you. I see profiles on social media that indicate to me that I'm unable to tell if it is completely AI generated or not. It's gotten that good. And they'll introduce flaws into it because some of it's too perfect. You know it's fake. It's too perfect. And there's no evidence. There's no confused fingers. They're figuring all this stuff out. And so, and people are doing it on purpose, of course. So it's not just AI out there on its own trying to fool you. There are people whose job it is to lie to you and fool you. That's their whole fucking job, is to lie to you. It's probably a huge amount of people's jobs. And it's kind of disgusting. advertising in general, hopefully will die. I mean, as we look at the dead internet theory, look up dead internet theory, please, where more and more of it's fake. Even on my Facebook feed, I noticed that my friends feed doesn't have my friends on it. I have all these supposed friends, some of whom are actual people I know, and I never see anything by them. And they've removed the feature where you can just look at your friends feed and not have it be filled with stuff of things you're not following at all, that somebody paid to stick in front of your face, right? You're the product, they're using you, your time is the thing that they're selling to other people. It's not about bringing people together. It's not whatever the fuck Mark Zuckerberg said it was going to be. You know, you can say something's going to be something, but then you just sell out and you use people. It's all fucking lies. So Facebook will die. They're killing Facebook on purpose because they're making lots of money doing it. And what that means is that we have to create a whole different internet. We have to create spaces in which people are all vetted as being real, that they've signed a social contract that they're not going to be big liars, and that they have reputation tracking so that we can track who's a big liar and kick them out. Walled gardens. There's a term, walled garden, for a protected social space online. But the walled gardens I know about have all been turned into a place to imprison people. They're not a garden, they're a walled prison. And that's what you live in social media. Social media is gone as it exists. And so, you know, I'm pretty pro-technology, and I was hoping that the internet would exist to bring people together and create greater understanding, and we could have a greater approximation of a shared concept of truth, and we could interact better economically and socially with each other. But it's not being used that way. It's being specifically used to destroy your social life, to enslave you, and lie to you. That's what's going on. Try and disagree with that. I'd be really curious to hear what your reasoning is. Because I look at it, and that's exactly what I see. And I have been online since before there was a web, you know, back when there was BBSs and dial-up, and before Usenet. Usenet was a pretty cool thing. It was a connection of the few people on the internet having conversations. And I was 18 when I first had exposure to that, and it was actually really pleasant because it was a bunch of smart people exchanging ideas, some of which were new to me, not all of which I agreed with and still don't, and a few assholes, because people are assholes often. But my impression of humanity at that time was very positive, and I was like, wow, this is a very exciting, optimistic thing where all these people are getting together and able to share ideas with each other. And I had this hippie-esque notion of like this great world that might exist because we were all so connected now. Like this global consciousness could occur. And it's like, oh, something went really wrong along the way. Very wrong. And it's only going to get worse. So at this point, as an individual, how do I respond to that? Well, I think it's that I need to find and create and be involved with walled gardens. Spaces that have limits on who can be in them and who can't be, and require people be real people, even if they use pseudonyms. Privacy could still be very useful. But create the value in human interactions where we can actually trust the people we're talking to, that they're even people at all. So, yeah. I don't know if 90% of the people are assholes in the world or not. I think we are operating under difficult conditions. I see young people posting videos, and I feel very sad for them, that they're being presented with a pretty horrible world. That's just like me, except I'm old and I don't matter and I'm going to die anyway, who cares? But they're being presented, they're growing up in a world that's pretty negative, and they're recognizing it. They're seeing that everything is a fucking scam, you know? If somebody says they like you, that they want something from you, they want to give you something, God, the people I'm the most afraid of are people who say they want to help me. Because over 90% of the time, they're a scammer who's lying to me. And I'm not dumb enough to fall for it. And we have to train young people to understand that horrible truth, that people are pretty bad. I do recommend the book Elephant in the Brain. If you think people are good, we're not fundamentally good or evil. But we're being run. We're being enslaved by evil people. And many of those people think they're good. You might be one of them. Maybe I'm talking to one. I mean, it's all of us, really. You got to look in the mirror and say, how am I a bad person? How do I negatively impact other people? And I look at my own life, and I have. I have, at minimum, not been what people want me to be, but that doesn't mean you're bad. In fact, it might mean you're breaking away from really negative systems. I mean, like let's use slavery as an example. Most of us can think that enslaving black people in the United States was a pretty fucking bad idea. And slavery didn't even end with the end of slavery. It, still had Jim Crow laws and all that. We'll just use that as one example. We can probably mostly agree that's a terrible idea. These are not three-fifths of a person. These are not people who are different. They're people who have been fucked over by their own ancestors in Africa who sold them, and the people who enslaved them and moved them to another system in which they didn't have the rights as other people based on their skin color. Total fucking bullshit. I think we can agree on that. And we can look at who the demons were, the people who were considered bad, fighting against that. And I think those people were heroes. Harriet Tubman's an obvious one. You can say, hey, she did good stuff. They were even talking about putting her on the $20 bill in the U.S. I thought that was pretty cool. And I wanted to put the picture of her with a gun on it, because freedom does come from people being powerful as individuals. There's a reason there's a Second Amendment. And if you're anti-gun rights, you're pro-slavery. That's what you are. I want more good people to have guns, and I want less bad people to have guns. And I want less ability for bad people with guns that create war, oppression, mass imprisonment, government theft via civil forfeiture. I mean, the biggest thieves in the United States just steal through civil forfeiture. Like, we'll find the money or the resources you have guilty and we'll just take it. I mean, you live in such systems of oppression and corruption. Who is the guy? John Brown? I don't even know if he was black or white. But he fought. And, John Brown would be considered a terrorist. But what was he fighting for? He fought for what was right. I mean, one of the civil rights guys I like a lot, because slavery didn't end when it ended. It didn't end. But I liked Malcolm X. I read, I think it was an autobiography or biography. I don't know what I read. There's a great movie with Denzel Washington, maybe. I think it was him. Great actor. About Malcolm X. And Malcolm X, the Black Panthers, yes, I can criticize some things about the Black Panthers, but sometimes you have to use violence to create freedom. And so in order to create freedom, you're going to have to be a terrorist. I mean, the list of people that the U.S. government considers terrorists are a lot of people who just want freedom and rule of law. It indicates that they are themselves. The U.S. government is a terrorist organization. They're anti-American. And I do realize that in saying that, that's heresy. Not my fault. And if you really think the U.S. government follows the law, you're a traitorous motherfucking asshole. Look in the goddamn mirror, study some law, study some history, look at how oppression works, and rediscover the good things that the U.S. had, the good things that they had for a while that, didn't last because it's really hard to remain free as a system matures, it will be taken over by evil. It's the nature of systems. And systems tend to support the system. I want to support the individual. Does that mean I think we should all work as selfish individuals? No. We should work for our communities, which is us, voluntarily. Voluntarism, agorism, non-aggression principle. Respecting each other, including our different ways of being, as long as they're not attacking other people. But that's not how we live. Start with the mirror. How are you hurting other people? I don't know. Fucking pretty much ready to give up on everybody. There's a few people hearing this who will understand and accept what I'm saying, and who will see themselves as part of the problem and part of the solution. The solution set is way harder, because in fighting against evil, we often become evil ourselves. You'll see that in all kind of activist movements, right? Where they get validation from their group to fight against the evil that's over there, and those people are terrible and bad. And it's like, I'm afraid we're all in the big slavery boat together. Even the rich motherfuckers. You know, they're doing what they can in the game that's provided for them. And I would rather seduce the rich than kill them. Because some of them do actually also care. And they don't want a horrible world. And I don't really think a lot of people are out there like trying to destroy the entire natural environment. Most of them, that's not their goal, unless they're pretty psychologically damaged at this point. I think most people, if they were given a vision of a kind of a positive future for humanity, that they might find it very attractive. One in which they're surrounded by other people who wish them well, by other people who want to plant more and have food be grown near you and be made of food, not contaminated as shit that poisons you and diseases you so that you die of crazy shit younger. And not just people who think money actually has any value. Money is fake, made-up shit. What matters is land and life, not love and light. Love and light. The people who say that, yeah. They're often cute, but love and light. Everything should be free. No, shit ain't going to be free. You're going to have to work. And there should be a lot more people working in agriculture than there are now, because right now fossil fuels are providing all your food. And then they just give you contaminated, poisoned food. And the meat you eat is based on animal abuse. We could still eat meat, and we can raise it better. I mean, hunting is the best. And the kind of people who are against hunting don't understand. Like, they're supporting more evil systems. I don't know, it's complicated. Actually, I mean, I'm not pro-hunting that much because we've killed less shit. So I think chickens and rabbits are the way to go. But I got all sorts of weird solutions. I got a big solution set going on. So I'm working on it. If you don't find everything I say offensive, or too much of it too offensive, be in contact with me, because I actually would love to work with other people who want to make a better world. And it means we're going to have to give up being a lot of ways that are fundamentally evil that we think we need. It might mean we need to give up a lot of things we think make us comfortable and that are very damaging to others and ourselves. So, I'm not presenting myself as some guru. I fucking hate gurus. I'm not saying I have everything figured out. I'm not saying I have the magic solution. And don't trust anyone who does. I'm a flawed individual who's fucked up in very special ways and really made even to do what I'm doing, to give you this message. I have a very strange background, and I'm not really very manipulative. I'm not going to lie to you much. If I wanted to, I could. I have the acting skill to do it. I could give you spiritual solutions. I could manipulate you, and I could be rich, and I would hate myself then because I would be totally part of the problem. Not willing. I gotta go. See you later. Good luck to you. Don't be part of the 90% of the problem if it really is that high. It might be 100%. Maybe we're just all terrible. I think that's probably more true. How am I terrible? Unfortunately, a bunch of ways. Not that many. So I'm going to end up giving away everything I have because I'll be dead. You might as well realize your own mortality. Even if you're young, which is harder to do, but you might as well start out realizing that when you're young. Think about your legacy and what it is you are as a person, the sculpture that is your life. Because everything you do cuts away at the nothing. The nothing? No, it cuts away at your DNA, your programming, your initial programming. It cuts away at the culture you were born into and that you're programmed with early on, from the very earliest experiences you have. And you're not just DNA, of course, your chemical state and all the culture that you're given as you exist before you're really aware of yourself as a person. But at some point, you become in charge of yourself, increasingly, hopefully. Either that or you can just remain a victim of everything around you that created you. Your nurture, nature, you're both, whatever. But at some point, you're in charge. And you can realize the effect you have on everything around you because you do have the greatest power there is of anyone in your life. You have greater power than those who created you, whether it was your far past ancestors or your parents or your family or the culture you happen to have been born into. Poor you. But you can take control and you can sculpt your life. You be your own sculpture. I guess I like the sculpture analogy because it's also true that every cut you make into the block of existence that you are, the materials you're created with, damages that, but it creates something before you die. And you could be happy with what you created or you could not be. And hopefully you decide for good, not bad. Hopefully, and whatever that is, and it's unclear. It's very unclear what that is. And there's people who do horrible things that think they're great. They think they're good people, and they're not mostly. That's obvious since we live in a world that's pretty fucked up. And so we are always in this fight to be a better person, I suppose. But not necessarily by other people's standards, because a lot of people want you to be a good person by being a bad one that benefits them. So that's tricky stuff. I'm going to give away everything I own because I don't have anyone to give it to. And most of that's irrelevant. Now, the things I give you in my words and my thoughts, that's cute, that's nice, but there's not a shortage of thought in the world. And there's plenty of books you can read that were written long ago, and there's plenty of books you can read that are easy to publish now, so everybody's just spewing out bullshit for you to consume. So don't trust anything you're presented with, whether it's old or new, doesn't matter. How the hell am I going to accomplish this? Now, the idea that I'm going to give away everything I own is going to sound very attractive to a lot of people who haven't created their own stuff, and it attracts people I don't want to be associated with. I want to give everything I have away to people who are going to continue what I would like to see in the world. I'm an egomaniac, like we all are. Hopefully a fairly diverse one, and hopefully one that has a lot of empathy for other people as themselves being also experiments in reality and a perception of reality. And I have one thing to give away, one thing that many people value, and that is my forest. I have a forest. And I don't just want to give it away to anybody. I want to give it away to somebody who's going to protect it and continue with the philosophies I hold. People who are compatible with my own values. And you can pick up some of those values off of other videos I've made, and I'm going to have to filter out liars and evil people. And here's my plan on how to do that. First, I'm not going to give it away to one person. There's nobody I trust. I don't have anybody I'm genetically related to that wants what I have, or that I even barely know. I know my mother. She's very nice. She's also older than me. Big surprise. But she doesn't want it. And my genetic relatives have shown no interest, which puts me in a very interesting position, because that means I have to seek out in all of the world, which has a lot of people in it. So that's pretty cool. Who can I give it to? And more important than finding the right individual is finding the right social system that can be created to further my values and protect that forest. Because the forest is kind of like my kid, right? I don't have kids of my own. I have dogs. I like my dogs. But they can't really run the forest. And that forest has to go into a legal ownership status that protects it. And that will be a nonprofit, I believe. I have a nonprofit now. It's not a good nonprofit. No one's involved in it hardly. But a bigger one that has a lot more people controlling it. And that will be the actual ownership of the land will be through the nonprofit. But then who controls the nonprofit? Well, it's a lot of land. It's a lot of forest. And so what I'm picturing is to divide it up, I think, into areas. And those areas can have different focuses. Foci. Focuses? Foci? I speak English, but I don't know. English is a messed up language. I'm going to pick those people based on some shared values, and I've been pretty clear about those. There's some legal issues that I got to figure out, but the cultural ones are harder. And so you can look at my other stuff I've said and figure out if we might be compatible. And if we can gather people who would be compatible in their own group to run parts of it. I don't know if it legally gets divided or not. There's benefits doing that. There's benefits not doing that. I know that I have to be very careful. And I mean, I'm talking about the idea of creating intentional communities. And that right there already should be a massive red flag that it's all going to be fucked up mess. You know? Oh. The problem is I'm kind of nuts in the sense that I have a complex mix of thoughts that don't all fit into very easy categories. That's actually a good thing. I don't trust people who are really polarized, who believe the one true thing for everybody. It just isn't that way. And you have to think far into the future of, you know, what about kids and what's the next generation going to do? In general, let's get to some more specific stuff. I do have a bias towards generally younger people because they're going to live longer, maybe. But of course, younger people are often stupid, and not always, But I don't know. You have to make plans for a lot of things that are difficult. How the fuck am I going to do this? There's one community I kind of like how they worked out, and I think it's called The Farm in Tennessee. There was a guy named Stephen Bascom. Was that his name? I don't even know his name. And he had some kind of vision, and I'm not saying he's the ideal. I haven't really studied that enough, but they still do exist as a community, which is pretty cool. Now, they fucked up by having like 1,500 hippies get together and try and create a community. And over time, they realized that most of those people were not contributing anything and that they were not going to survive effectively. And they switched from 1,500 people down into about 150, if I recall correctly, and you can look this up and maybe I'm wrong. But what they needed to do was to focus it down to a smaller number of people who had social agreements that would work. And I think he was the legal owner of the land, but he knew he was going to die. And when he died, if I understand correctly, then it became ownership of the community. And I have some ideas far beyond what the farm envisioned, and I've studied many communities and been involved with some, and I've seen the many paths of failure. I think there's something some people say of, like, I think there's a phrase, like, there's many ways in which there are terrible families and very few ways in which there are good ones. I don't know if that's an actual phrase, but I feel like there's many ways communities mess up and there's very few in which they succeed. And the farm, at least, continues to exist. Now, that doesn't mean that I idealize the farm, and it probably isn't the goal that I picture. I have goals far beyond that. But I appreciate that their experiment did succeed and continue to exist. How the hell do I give away my land, and how do I figure out who to trust? Because if you were going to actually give up some of your freedom, which you're going to give up freedom if you're involved in any kind of community at all, if you think freedom's your only goal, you don't got the right goal. In order to operate with other people, you do give up freedom. You make social contracts, and any time you make an agreement with anyone, you gave up some kind of freedom. And that usually ends up fucked up. You know, you gave up some freedom to be in a relationship with someone as a couple. You give up freedom, well, you were raised without freedom. It's difficult because I'm very pro-freedom, right? I want to have a culture in which you have huge amounts of options, but the most effective cultures are often the least free. Oppression works really well, which is why you live in a world of massive oppression. And so what I'd rather do is talk about social contracts and agreements that you have with other people to allow you to operate with trust, taking care of the land around you. This is more important to me than any individual. You get individualism, freedom, communalism, not communism. That's a state thing based on violence. So no fucking communists welcome. And whatever the fuck capitalism means, it probably isn't something I want by your standard definition of it. But having people have freedom to control their own labor, it is kind of interesting that both capitalism and communism both claim that you should own the means of production and own yourself, but neither one of them in practice seems to actually result in that. So I'm trying to solve this complicated problem by promoting greater freedom, but figuring out what are the minimal social agreements we have to then work together. Now, the obvious thing you should do as a strong and independent person is to just try and own all your own shit and operate within the existing civilization we have given to us. But then you're fighting in a system of slavery. You must break away from slavery. But in order to do that, you have to pick a system of agreement that reduces your freedom. This fucked up shit. All I'm trying to do is give away my land and everything I own, which isn't that much more. I have a lot of books. Dogs are temporary. Van that barely works. Probably the most important thing I can give away is a template for behavior, a cultural template for how we could be, how we could operate. And that's something that if you're frustrated in life with what you've been given as a default culture, that's something you should seek. Now, you may not like mine. That's fine. We might not be compatible. That doesn't mean you're bad. It just means you have a different vision. And I hope it's as complicated and as detailed as mine, because you're going to have it be. Just getting together with your friends and making your little utopia isn't going to fucking work out. Go study every community that's ever existed that you have access to and see how they fail. And they might be ancient ones. I mean, do you want to live with the Taliban? Do you like that? It's a very solid culture. It knows what it wants, and I don't want to live anywhere near it. I don't even want it to exist on the planet. And we deal with a lot of bigotry that we have where we see other people as the enemy. And I mostly don't want people who fall for a lot of that shit. A lot of people are very sexist. Some of them are racist, which I hope we can mostly all agree is stupid. Your skin color has bullshit nothing to do with anything. And a lot of racists are not the evil one, white. The one that's most hated in my experience, but of course I'm kind of apparently white. So I get blamed for a lot of shit I didn't do. But, you know, whatever skin color you have, those people were evil too. So if you're a person who takes great pride in your skin color, you're out. Do you want to live with white supremacists? You're out. Do you want to be a person of color and you find that that's your identity and you're better? Fuck it, you're out too. BIPOC, black, indigenous people of color, that's a phrase to eliminate the Asians because they're too successful and therefore they're bad. As far as I can tell. I'm making that up. But basically this whole thing of like all the brown people against all the white people is really stupid. And so if you are a brown person, you're fine with me being brown. But if that's your big claim to goodness, if that makes you morally superior, fuck off. You know, you're the worst kind of racist right now. So if you think your orientation sexually is important, like you're better because you're gay, fuck off. Okay? I don't care who you fuck unless you're in my bed. But that doesn't make you better. And I've been told by a few asshole gay people how bad I am because I'm heterosexual. You know, and then you've got transsexual people who say that you're bigoted and evil because you don't want to fuck people of your gender who change to a different gender because they're really important because they're transsexual. And it's like, no, sorry. Nobody has to fuck anyone. Nobody has to give a shit about you or give you anything. But I'm trying to give away everything I own. I want to cut all those fuckers out. All the bigoted fucks. And I'm very aware that I have my own forms of bigotry. I used to not like small dogs. I like one small dog now. Not all small dogs are bad. They're not all yappy little bitches. My bitch is excellent. It's my favorite dog. I've had 2 other favorite dogs in my life. Unfortunately, they're dead. Wow, that's interesting. All of my favorite dogs have been female. Does that matter? No. I've had a lot of favorite dogs, actually. But, I never noticed that. Anyway, all your gender shit, all your gender war shit, I don't want brought anywhere near me. I understand your frustrations. I don't like men or women either. They're both terrible. All people are terrible. Great. So let's give up on the details of these specifics. Let's give up on nationalism. I'm from the United States of America. Lots of people really fucking hate people from the U.S. And they stereotype them heavily. They're all just idiot, shallow people with no culture, blah, blah, blah. Fuck off, you motherfucking shitheads. Nationalism is dumb as fuck. You could have been born anywhere. You could have been born as a gringo. You could have been born in the U.S. Would that make you a bad person automatically? No, it would not. Hell, where I was born, if I was born 20 or 40 kilometers north, I'd have been Canadian. Would that have made me a different person? No. If I was born in Europe, no, it wouldn't have made me a different person. If I was Parisian, would I be superior? Have a superior culture, as some Parisians seem to think? I have a little bit of bigotry against Parisians just because I've met a disproportionately high number of asshole fucking pricks who are from Paris. Does that mean everybody from Paris is bad? No, it does not. Nobody represents anything. They don't represent their culture or their group. They can claim to, but that means they're a pig. Fucking claiming to own a demographic? Nah, fuck all that shit. So, back to the topic at hand. I have this forest that I would like to protect. And I would ideally like to inspire other people for ways to protect land. Now, there is a big problem. And that is that individual ownership of land is often the best way to protect it. Because that individual is motivated to protect it. And so co-ownership of anything causes conflict. Even if it's just a couple, even if it's just two people, and they own land or they own kids, that's the worst case, is they then turn the kids into a warfare zone to use them to fight against each other. I mean, that's probably the most horrible thing because it damages other people directly. And then that becomes generational conflict, often gender-based, of course. So that's a tough one. I mean, one option for me is just to divide all my land up and either sell it, in which case I would be rich. It's a big piece of land that has great value. I could make shit tons of money. I could retire, and that would be failure for me because the individual nature of owning land causes people to maximize their profit off of it, and it will not cause them to protect the forest. I could give my land away to what's called a wildlife conservation fund or something. That's tempting. And that's a nonprofit, I believe. And I will look them up again right now. There's a tab open in my browser to read about them. And that is a great option for me. But I'm trying to figure out how people can live inland in a forest and also protect it. How we can grow our own food there. How we can keep those trees for shade and to enhance the soil, how we can have wildlife exist. My land's not super huge. In fact, by some standards, it's tiny. I got about 80 acres, 33 hectares, 80 acres. That's not really big, but then again, it's bigger than the town nearest to where I live, which has 400 people in it. But I have different architectural ideas about how we can reduce the human footprint on the land, stack them up, do full rain capture, composting toilets only, reducing energy use, using no energy for heating or cooling of buildings, putting buildings into the slope so that we're using the cooling nature of the earth and the heat of the sun to be very comfortable between those two using less energy and building buildings that last for, hundreds and hundreds of years. Not just being built for a 30-year mortgage, which is how they're built in many places. They're built to be junk. They're built to be garbage. And developing a lifestyle that all of these people who I'm giving my land to are agreeing to it, and therefore they're working better together for their security, for their fulfillment, and for future generations, because we're all temporary. I mean, you might be young, but you're going to die too, so. How the hell do I give it all away? And then die with a smile on my face, knowing that there's some chance that can continue in a way that actually makes a better world. It was such a tiny experiment. And none of this is popular. There's no government programs to help out that kind of delusion. There's no subsidies. And most people are just looking out for themselves. Especially people looking at a video about how to get free shit off some dumb fuck hippie in the woods. How can I get that land? I need land for free. So my question to these people who might be interested, you, is what do you do to improve yourself and to provide value to the people and the land around you? And I would love to hear proposals. I would love to hear proposals from people who are very individualistic and say, I'm going to do this thing in this place. And I know of land that's community owned near me and does work. And those are mostly indigenous folks. And they have systems that have existed for generations. Many, like long generations, many generations, not long, many. And they function. Or do they? Some do, some don't. And I don't know. I guess I'm lucky that I'm in this position where I can even talk about this, because I have a strange background, and I'm willing to do something that nobody else I know of is going to do. But I guess my biggest challenge is to filter people out and find the ones who can function as a group and also maximize individual freedom. That's sort of the big conflict I have. And I've done a really good job as an individual at finding a level of freedom that is very enviable for most people. But for me, I'm alone. I'm disagreeable, unfriendly, damaged. But nobody has to really like me for this to work out. I would like people not to kill me. So if I do set this up, and the land transfers, ideally I would transfer before I die. And I can experiment with that functioning and stuff, because one of the problems is people are going to try and take it over. Anything that exists like that, you have to protect against a bunch of types of people who will try and take it over. They'll be, strong personalities, charismatic personalities, cute people who use sex to do it, people who use spirituality to do it. They will do anything to take over resources. And I want to figure out a different metric by which we measure people, and there will be people you have to get rid of. There'll be people who you want to attract. And I have not done well at that. I've attracted, it hasn't worked out. I've never really tried. I had a lot of visitors, a lot of temporary visitors. Super fun, nice people. If you're one of those visitors, seriously, take no insult. I'm not insulting you as an individual, except for some of you and the few of you I've had to kick out because you're fucked up people. But the group I'm talking about that would take over this land, the groups, I think plural's better on that, because they can have different goals culturally. They can, I mean, it isn't, the goal isn't to create some utopian vision of the perfect people. It's to create groups that can function together and have different ways of being and different goals even, and different businesses and ways of surviving economically in the world as it exists now, and the world that will exist after civilization collapses, because it will. That's kind of fundamental to how I view things. It certainly is not a requirement, and I would rather civilization not collapse. It sounds terrible. Civilization collapsing. It sounds like very uncomfortable, and death and billions of people dying and stuff. But that's the picture I see currently. And it would be nice if the whole world woke up, and maybe after the first billion die, a lot more people will wake up. And maybe some of the things I say will actually become more attractive to a lot of people, and they will create their own cultural systems that work for them. And people can move in and out of those cultures. People can have different values when they're young than the values that they have when they're older. Or they can just decide, I like this lifestyle more than that one. People could be nomadic again. They already are doing that because they're losing their homes, because their homes are being taken over by corporations and evil government entities that want to enslave them, have enslaved them completely. So this particular experiment of my own land going away and me dying could be really fucking cool. You know, maximum creativity, lots of cultural freedom, based on, and this is a very hard thing to figure out, is what is that base of like ethics that we have to share? Well, one of the sets of ethics we have to share is not to be in conflict directly with the government. So we're going to follow local law, because a lot of like culty community systems attract people who want to get away from the restrictions of the law and the government, but then that puts them in conflict with it. The whole system fails. People go to jail. People get killed. You know, you look at Waco or something like this. A lot of shit's religiously based. I want to get away from that shit. And so I don't know how to filter those people out correctly. And my land may not be the ending point for people. It could be I could set my place up as an experimental space for community, and that people then hook up there to form groups that go off and buy land and create their own communities. That's totally an option. It'd be totally fun for me, because I would get to meet lots of really creative, motivated people with resources for the most part, because collecting a bunch of people with no resources or skills fails every time. It's a horrible mess, and that's very common. People with nothing are very motivated to seek other people to take from. So, hi, little dog. Hi there. Hi. Can I pet you? Oh, you're such a cutums. Hi. I pet you on the head. Yeah. I pet you on the neck. Yeah, I pet you right there. You're such a cutums. Oh, you're so cutie baby. Yeah. Do you trust me more now? You do trust me more now. This is how trust gets built. Hi, you sweetums. Do you have a home? I did ask a guy in the store if this dog had a home, because this dog is very friendly, and people without a home are much more friendly. They're looking for one. Can I pick you up? Come on. Don't bite me. Come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on. I didn't hurt you. I did not hurt you. Hi. This dog has also been attacked a little bit, and it has a little bit of disease in its ear. Hi, honey. Hi. Yeah, that's okay. You trust me more? Well, I'm going to go away pretty soon here, but this is the kind of thing we have to do where everyone's cautious, and you should be very cautious. You should be scared shitless of other people, including me, because you don't know me. Can I pick you up? I bet I can't. I bet you're still scared of me. Here, I'll let go. I go away. Nobody's hurt. Oh, he's now sitting facing away from me, which implies a certain level of trust. I'm going to pick you up. You're going to try and bite me, aren't you? Oh, nope. You're even closer now. Hi. Yeah, okay, I stop. See, this dog wants love, just like people do. How do we get close to each other and trust each other? That's a good question. How do I trust you with my land? It's damn near impossible. I mean, I can set up forms and I can filter you out. You can lie to me. I can look at your background, I can see who you've damaged, ask your ex-partners about how fucked up you are, and not trust them either, because they lie. I do wonder if this dog needs a home. I have my van here, but I'm really not in the mood to adopt dogs right now. And this is the same thing as adopting people. Because if I'm going to work with people, I'm essentially adopting them into a family, or multiple families, since they don't have to be in a family with me. And I don't know what family means. It's a confusing term. Well, we know what it means biologically. But the idea of intentional family is very attractive right now, because a lot of people don't like where they're coming from. And we realize we have cultural options of how we want to live instead of how we're forced to live in the community we were raised with, the religion we were raised with, the customs, the style, everything. And it would be nice if there was more fluid movement between those, not constant. I'm not suggesting that people should always just not be investing in each other and just wandering around having a good time because they're rich little fuckers. I've met them. But figuring out how can we work together long term, in tune with the earth, because the earth is way longer term than us. A tree is more important to me than most people. That's cuter to say than it is to actually believe. Any individual tree is not that important, although I do have some trees that I consider dang near magical. And it would be nice to build like shrines almost around them, and spots to sit, and take the coolest trees. And also we can sculpt trees. I'm going to get way off topic now, but I usually am off topic. You are a tree that needs to be sculpted. You are a person that needs to be sculpted. And you're going to do most of the work yourself. You got to do all the work. No, you got to do a bunch of the work. But I could have a forest that you could thrive in. Those are the people I'm looking for. Let's just mix metaphors and go a little more nuts, shall we? Let's do it. Hey, little dog. If that dog doesn't have a home, I would be so tempted to adopt it. And I do hate little dogs, but this one's not it hasn't even yapped at me once. And that's my primary problem with little dogs. In fact, when I was in Ireland a long time ago, I noticed how cool Jack Russell Terriers were, just to be racist. And they would sit outside the pub waiting for their owner. And they would just seem so noble and cool. I would like to find the noblest, coolest, most awesome people, even if they, like me, are also conflicted, confused by the world, damaged by the world. Even if they've done bad things, which we've done. We can find redemption. Strange word to use. I do come from a Christian background, so I use a few Christian-y terms, but I don't think we have to be karmically held as victims of our supposed past lives, which are made up, or even our past actions. We can find forgiveness, we can give forgiveness, and we can train ourselves to treat each other better. How the fuck am I going to give my life away? My everything? I'm working on it. Hope you're working on you. That's it for me on this video. A cute little dog. I can't just grab a dog off the street. I can't kidnap dogs. But what if this dog doesn't have a home? I don't know.